We have to figure out some way to ensure that the advent of digital superintelligence is one which is symbiotic with humanity. I think that's the single biggest existential crisis that we face, and the most pressing one.
It's kind of like, how much smarter are you with a phone or computer than without? You're vastly smarter, actually. You can answer any question, if you're connected to the internet, answer any question pretty much instantly, any calculation. Your phone's memory is essentially perfect. Your phone can remember videos, pictures, everything perfectly. Your phone is already an extension of you. You're already a cyborg. Most people don't realize they are already a cyborg. That phone is an extension of yourself. It's just that the data rate, the rate at which, or the communication rate between you and the cybernetic extension of yourself that is your phone and computer is slow. It's very slow. It's like a tiny straw of information flow between your biological self and your digital self. And we need to make that tiny straw like a giant river, a huge, high bandwidth interface. It's an interface problem, data rate problem. Things are getting more and more connected. They're, at this point, constrained by bandwidth. Our input-output is slow, particularly output. Output got worse with thumbs. We used to have input with 10 fingers, now we have thumbs. But images are also a way of communicating at high bandwidth. That communicates far more information than you can communicate with your thumbs. You have a bandwidth problem. You just can't communicate through your fingers, it's too slow. From a long-term existential standpoint, that's like the purpose of Neuralink, is to create a high bandwidth interface to the brain such that we can be symbiotic with AI. Any group of people, a company is essentially a cybernetic collective of people and machines. That's what a company is. And then there's like a collective AI in Google search where we're all sort of plugged in as like nodes on the network. We're all feeding this network with our questions and answers. We're all collectively programming the AI. All the humans that connect to it are one giant cybernetic collective. This is also true of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these social networks. They're giant cybernetic collectives.
He's going into arrest.
Lock, I got him. Now, Tank, now.
Thinking of corporations and just thinking of just human beings communicating online through these social media networks as some sort of an organism it's a cyborg. It's a combination. It's a combination of electronics and biology.
Yeah.
How many people are obsessed with materialism and getting the latest, greatest thing? Well, a lot of it is most certainly fueling technology and innovation. And it almost seems like it's built into us. It's like what we like and what we want, that we're fueling this thing. It seems like it's built into us. It almost seems like it's an instinct. Our job is to somehow or another fuel this.
It feels like we are the biological bootloader for AI. We are building it. The AI is informed, strangely, by the human limbic system. It is, in large part, our id writ large, sort of primal drives.
Mm-hmm.
All the things that we like and hate and fear, their projection of our limbic system. The merge scenario with AI is the one that seems like probably the best. Like if you can't beat it, join it. That's
Yeah.
you know. I think best case scenario we effectively merge with AI, where AI serves as a tertiary cognition layer. So you're currently with your cortex and limbic system are in a symbiotic relationship, and the cortex is mostly in service to the limbic system. People may think that the thinking part of themselves is in charge, but it's mostly their limbic system that's in charge, and the cortex is trying to make the limbic system happy. Now, if we can have a third layer, which is the AI extension of yourself, that is also symbiotic, and there's enough bandwidth between the cortex and the AI extension of yourself such that the AI doesn't de facto separate, then that could be a good outcome. That could be quite a positive outcome for the future.
So instead of replacing us, it will radically change our capabilities.
Yes, it will enable anyone who wants to have superhuman cognition. This is not a matter of earning power, because your earning power would be vastly greater after you do it. So it's just like anyone who wants can just do it, in theory. That's the theory. And if that's the case, then, and let's say billions of people do it, then the outcome for humanity will be the sum of human will, the sum of billions of people's desire for the future. That
Billions of people with enhanced cognitive ability, radically
Yes.
enhanced.
Yes.
Which would be, but how much different than people today? Like if you had to explain it to a person who didn't really understand what you were saying, like how much different are you talking about? When you say radically improved, like what do you mean?
It will be difficult to really appreciate the difference.
And it will be able to improve itself.
Yes.
That's where it gets spooky, right? The idea that it can do thousands of years of innovation very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Out of control countdown?
Out of control. Yeah. People call it the singularity, and that's probably a good way to think about it. It's a singularity. It's hard to predict, like a black hole, what happens past the event horizon.
Right.
It's
So
very different.
once it's implemented, it's very different because it will
Once
be
the
able
genie's
to
out of the bottle, what's
Right.
going to happen?
Obviously, if we're experiencing more change now in a year than we previously experienced in 1,000 years, we can propagate that trend into the future and see that a day will come when we will experience more change in an hour than we have experienced in the past 20, 30,000 years. A situation like that is unimaginable, so we call it a singularity, a place where the normal rules of modeling break down. Modern religions have anticipated the singularity by calling it the eschaton, or the end of time. Technological communities have anticipated the singularity by thinking in terms of artificial intelligence. In whatever form it takes, we seem to be on the cusp of a dramatic evolutionary leap into a deeper order of complexity than biology or biology plus culture has been able to provide. We're on the brink of something truly awesome and unknown.
It's not necessarily bad. It's definitely going to be outside of human control. The point at which we have digital superintelligence, that's when we pass the singularity, and things become just very uncertain. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad or good. But the point at which we pass singularity, things become extremely unstable. So we want to have a human brain interface before the singularity, or at least not long after it, to minimize existential risk for humanity and consciousness as we know it. It could be terrible, and it could be great. It's not clear. If we solve the data rate problem, then I think I think we can hang on to human-machine symbiosis through the long term.
People ask me, why does quantum mechanics matter, given that it's little tiny stuff, and who cares? There are three possible answers. From a practical point of view, it doesn't make any difference at all. I mean, you still have to go to work and drive your car and do all the rest of it. From a second point of view, it infiltrates everything in the world, especially the world of electronics. But I think the important part is the third one, which is essentially a philosophical issue. Why are philosophers so passionate about deconstruction the assumptions of the world? I finally got it. I got it as a result of looking at quantum mechanics and comparing it to classical mechanics. They present two very different ways of thinking about the way that the world works and about what we are. So from a classical perspective, we are machines. And in machines, there's no room for a conscious experience. It doesn't matter if a machine dies, you can kill the machine, you can throw it in a dump, it doesn't matter. If that is the way that the world is, then people will behave in that way. But there's another way of thinking about the world which is suggested, it's pointed to by quantum mechanics, which suggested that the world is not this clockwork thing, but it's more like an organism. It's a highly interconnected organismic thing of some type, which extends through space and time. In that kind of environment, what I think and the way that I behave has a much greater impact, not only on myself, but on the rest of the world, than it would if it was a classical world. So from a very basic point of view having to do with morals and ethics, what I think affects the world. That's, I mean, in a sense, that's really the key for why a worldview change is important.
The universe is very strange. There seem to be two sets of laws that govern the universe. In our everyday classical world, meaning at roughly our size and time scales, things are described by Newton's laws of motion, set down hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And they work very well for billiard balls and cannonballs and gravity. However, when we get down to a small scale, when we get down to, say, the level of atoms, a different set of laws take over. These are the quantum laws, quantum theory, quantum mechanics. And at that level, particles may be in multiple places at the same time. They may behave as waves smeared out spatially and temporally. They may be interconnected over great distances. They may be unified into one quantum state, into one state, governed by one wave function. And the borderline, the threshold, this curtain between the quantum world and the classical world is really mysterious. It's called sometimes the collapse of the wave function, because in the quantum world, everything is in superposition of multiple possibilities, and in the classical world, these multiple possibilities seem to collapse to particular definite choices, so everything is in one particular place.
What is the field that is waving? An ocean of pure potentiality, an ocean of abstract potential existence. We call it the unified field, or superstring field, and that's what we're made of.
Connectivity among all things is a basic constituent of the fabric of reality. It's very difficult to wrap your mind around that. But Erwin Schrödinger said, he's one of the founders of quantum mechanics, that entanglement, which is this idea of this connectivity, is not just a property of quantum mechanics, it's the property.
And that's what the unified field is. It's pure abstract potential, pure abstract being, pure abstract self-aware consciousness, which rises in waves of vibration to give rise to the particles, the people, everything we see in the vast universe.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. this is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now, there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through, the electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
We don't know in quantum mechanics how to hook ourselves as observers up with the world. We don't know how to treat ourselves as observers as just another part of the physical system that we're describing. The only way we know how to do quantum mechanics as it's traditionally formulated is to keep the observer outside of the system you're describing. The minute you put him in, you get all these paradoxes.
When you are not looking, there are waves of possibility. When you are looking, then there are particles of experience.
And Mr. Masaru Emoto. Mr. Emoto became terribly interested in the molecular structure of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most receptive of the four elements.
For one sample of water, we drop about 0.5 cc's onto each 50 petri dishes. Then we take those 50 petri dishes and freeze them in a freezer at minus 25 degrees Celsius for about 3 hours. We take those frozen samples into a refrigerator that is set at minus 5 degrees Celsius, where a microscope with a camera is set up. There we take photographs of each of the 50 water drops individually. We first take photographs of water that we did not put any information in. Then we take the water with information to do the same procedure just described. We take those before and after photographs and compare the differences. When we projected the feeling of love and thanks to water, it made the most beautiful crystal.
This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and left them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
It's really all about laying the groundwork to make sure that if humanity collectively decides that creating digital superintelligence is the right move, then we should do so very, very carefully. Very, very carefully. This is the most important thing that we could possibly do.
Yeah, I think it's like fundamentally good, giving somebody back full motor control after they've had a spinal cord injury, restoring brain functionality after a stroke, solving debilitating genetically oriented brain diseases. These are all incredibly great, I think. And in order to do these, you have to be able to interface with the neurons at a detailed level, and you need to be able to fire the right neurons, read the right neurons, and then effectively you can create a circuit, replace what's broken with silicon, and essentially fill in the missing functionality. And then over time, it can be a tertiary layer where digital superintelligence lies, and that will be vastly more intelligent than the cortex, but still coexist peacefully and in a benign manner with the cortex and limbic system. I generally am a big fan of Carl Sagan. He's super cool and had a great way of putting things. All of our consciousness, all civilization, everything we've ever known and done is on this tiny blue dot. People also get too trapped in their squabbles amongst humans, and there's not think of the big picture. They take civilization and our continued existence for granted. They shouldn't do that. Look at the history of civilizations. They rise and they fall. And now, civilization it's globalized. And so civilization, I think, now rises and falls together. There's not geographic isolation. This is a big risk. Things don't always go up. That's an important lesson of history.
Well, the biggest issue I see with so-called AI experts is that they think they know more than they do. And they think they're smarter than they actually are. In general, we're dumber than we think we are, by a lot. I'm not normally an advocate of regulation and oversight. I think one should generally err on the side of minimizing those things. But this is a case where you have a very serious danger to the public. And so therefore there needs to be a public body that has insight and then oversight to confirm that everyone is developing AI safely. I really believe in the zeroth law of Asimov's zeroth law. You're going to take the set of actions most likely to support humanity in the future. The AI should try to maximize freedom.
In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. We need humanity. We need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed. the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. Don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. The kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power. The power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. In the name of democracy, let us all unite!
This is probably the moral frontier where we each personally must make a stand.
But why is Fantasia dying then?
Because people have begun to lose their hopes and forget their dreams. So the nothing grows stronger.
What is the nothing?
It's the emptiness that's left. It is like a despair destroying this world. Because people who have no hopes are easy to control. And whoever has the control has the power.
But that's impossible! It's only a story. It's not real. It's only a story. How could he let that happen? He doesn't understand that he's the one who has the power. I can't believe it. They can't be talking about me. He simply can't imagine that one little boy could be that important. Is it really me? Maybe he doesn't know what he has to do. What do I have to do? Bastian, why don't you do what you dream, Bastian?
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Today is August 4th, and it's the third day I'm doing Love is Not Homeless. It's hard to get love from strangers, or love in general. Many women, they find themselves in terrible situations because the lack of love, especially for themselves, but act of love towards them as a society. I see the difference of people who get love and people who don't. And that's a very destructive energy in your life. And you are not loved and accepted for who you are. What I see is like a high percentage of mental illness, mental disease. I see it everywhere. People are mentally unstable, acting out, rage, schizophrenia. And one thing takes to another, lots of meth addicts, heroin addicts. I see many things I couldn't even imagine before, but because I'm here in the first person, I can truly experience homelessness.
We are the loneliest society there has ever been. There's a study that asks Americans, how many close friends do you have who you could call on in a crisis? And when they started doing it years ago, the most common answer was 5. Today, the most common answer is none. I learned a lot about how this is affecting us from a man called Professor John Cacioppo, who was at the University of Chicago, one of the leading experts in the world about loneliness. He proved a few things. First thing he proved is that for a human being, being acutely lonely is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. If you become really lonely, that releases as much of the stress hormone cortisol as if you are punched in the face by a stranger. This is a terrible thing for us. And I asked Professor Cacioppo, well, why is it so devastating for us? And he said to me, why do you and I exist? One of the reasons we exist is because our ancestors on the savannas of Africa were really good at one thing. They weren't faster than the animals they took down a lot of the time. They weren't bigger than the animals they took down a lot of the time. But they were much better at banding together into tribes and cooperating. Just like bees evolved to need a hive, humans evolved to need a tribe. And we are the first human beings ever to try to live without tribes. It's making us feel terrible. Picture a bee that decided it was going to live apart from the hive. It would go crazy. It would start acting in a way that was completely haywire. Now imagine telling that bee that it was feeling that way just because of a pollen imbalance in its brain, right? You can see how that would be a bizarre way of thinking. So what I wanted to think about is, given that loneliness is driving this epidemic of depression and anxiety, it's one of the 9 factors I write about in my book, Lost Connections. What's the antidepressant for that, right? What do we do about that? The most effective ways of dealing with depression and anxiety are the ones that deal with the reasons why we feel so bad in the first place.
If you regard other people as essentially being the same as you, not in the numerous quirks and nuances of your nature, but in the fundamental way of being worthy of love. I told you, didn't I, about that cow I saw once being transported to an abattoir, that had its head out the window, and it was like savouring life. Just had its head out the window, savouring life. I thought, oh God, it's the same as me. That cow's the same as me. It just wants to be alive in the world and breathe stuff in, and it's about to get a bolt in the head. It's completely innocent to the true realities of life. I regard all people as essentially the same, all of us as expressions of some force that's difficult to ascertain with the limitations that we currently have. And that's not to say I don't go through life with loads of opposition, exploitation, complication. Just the place I return to inwardly is, we are one, we are one. I try to think that when I get irritated.
What if everyone is exactly the same? We're just living life through different bodies. What if that's the secret of happiness? Treat everyone as if it's you living another life. Yeah.
Our hands, our minds were made for the manipulation of matter and the creation of technology. So I embrace it. I think the future is marvelously exciting and bright.
In a future where we are a spacefaring civilization and out there among the stars, I think that's very exciting. If there are 2 futures, and one future is we're out there among the stars, and the things we read about and see in science fiction movies, the good ones, are true. And we have these starships, and we're going to see what other planets are like, and we're a multi-planet species, and the scope and scale of consciousness is expanded across many civilizations and many planets and many star systems, this is a great future. This is a wonderful thing to me, and that's what we should strive for.
I mean, over time, hundreds of millions of years or whatever it takes.
We could be a multi-planet species.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
We'd be a multi-planet species. That's what we want to be.
Legitimately, like air-conditioned
Great.
Saturn.
I'm pro-human.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
I love humanity. I think it's great. I mean, you know, strangely, I think a lot of people don't like humanity and see it as a blight, but I do not.
Well, I think part of that is just they've been struggling.
Love is the answer.
It is the answer.
Wouldn't hurt to have more love in the world.
It definitely wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
It'd be great.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah. I agree, man.
Like, really.
How are you going to fix that? You have a love machine you're working on? Jesus. That is preposterous.
Yeah. That is awesome. Dangerous to eyebrows.
Jesus.